As usual, we'll be waiting a few minutes while people join the webinar. So there will be some silence here, which I know is uncomfortable for many of us, especially those of us behind the screens, but we're going to suffer through it.
Maybe instead of just suffering through the silence, I can show you my cat. He definitely alleviates suffering.
He's a fluffy chunk.
Yes, he is.
Oh,
He's a good color.
love it.
Yes, mine is deciding whether or not she's going to join us for the proceedings. We shall see.
And mine was banished because she clawed up my wrists.
Ooh.
Ouch.
Oh. Yikes.
That can be serious, Brooke. Be careful.
I got Neosporin on it. I got Band-Aids on it. All right. Looks like we've got a bunch of folks in. I haven't seen the numbers change in a little bit, so we'll get started very shortly.
What's going on?
Would you like me to share my screen with the agenda?
Certainly. Thank you. See that some people have put their full name and their location in their Zoom information, which is fantastic. It means that you don't have to remember to include that with public comment. All right. Looks like we've been steady for a little while, so I will call this meeting of the Southerby School Board to order. First of all, we have the land acknowledgement. Marnie?
Thank you, Brooke. Southerby School District would like to begin by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral homelands, originally known as Chacoliche in the Schutzseed of the coastal Salish peoples, on the lands of the Lower Skagit, Tulalip, Swinomish, Stillaguamish, and Suquamish, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial, and who have hunted, fished, and gathered, and taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty and their right to self-determination. We honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and the water. Please join us in expressing our deep respect and gratitude to the Indigenous people of this territory for their enduring care and protection of the land which we currently occupy and share through the Treaty of Point Elliott, signed by 82 tribes in Mukilteo on January 22nd, 1855. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to brief description of protocol for public comment now that we are back on Zoom. First of all comments will come in via the Q&A form. They must all be accompanied by the speaker's name and general location. That would be just Langley, Clinton, Oak Harbor, wherever it might be. The school board does not usually respond to comments beyond thanking the speaker for sharing their opinion. Sorry, I'm looking through my document that has for our mixed or hybrid meetings, and a lot of these just do not matter. Just as if we were in person, however, Each community member will be limited to a single public comment. If that spans over multiple entries in the Q&A, that's fine, as long as it takes no more than 5 minutes to speak. They will be read. We will, as long as they fit our policy and procedures. It is inappropriate to use these comments to make derogatory personal remarks. To quote policy number 1400, however, the board recognizes the distinction between uncivil discourse, which it will not tolerate, and comments about the board, district, and/or staff that are negative yet still civil in nature. The leadership team member reading a comment which contravenes these guidelines or this policy will attempt to edit out derogatory comments but retain the general content of the comment. You can attack an idea, but not a person. For example, saying that Director Williford is a fool is a derogatory personal remark and is uncivil and will not be read. Saying that Director Williford's choice to repeat the same example again and again is a foolish decision is not a derogatory personal remark because it addresses the action rather than the person. We'll now move on to the minutes. Minutes from our last meeting. Do I have a motion in regards to them?
Move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about the minutes from the last meeting?
Do you want to add, Brooke, that you seconded my Pledge of Allegiance?
I don't know that that's necessary because as long as due to our traditional procedure, as long as 2 board members want something on the agenda, it goes on the agenda. So that was not something that needed to be in the minutes, in my opinion. But thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda and minutes as presented, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. The agenda and minutes as presented are approved. We would like to extend a welcome to Saul Rabinovich, who is our appointed student board representative. He's been appointed by the ASB. So welcome, Saul. We're very happy to have you on here and joining us on the board. We're looking forward to getting both of our student board reps here to get as much diversity of voice from the students as we can, while still keeping the board itself manageable. So you have a oath of office to swear, Saul. If you would raise your right.
I, Saul Rabinovich, do hereby solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Washington, and will faithfully discharge the duties of Student Director of the South Woodby School District, number 206, Allen County, State of Washington, to the best of my ability.
Welcome to the board. It's wonderful to have you here. And as we go forward through the other portions of this, we'll get many opportunities to get your input and expertise on these. Next
Welcome,
up is
Saul.
yes, sorry. I'll let everyone else welcome you too.
Just welcome and thank you. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Same.
thanks for
Nice to see
stepping up
you.
and filling the gap.
Okay. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda. For those who haven't been with us at a lot of these meetings, this is where we bundle a lot of standard things like personnel report, payroll, approval of clubs, all of those things, field trips into a single motion so that we can keep moving on with the meeting. So do I have a motion in regards to the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion to be had? Any discussion? Anything that anyone wants to discuss on this? Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. The consent agenda has been approved. We'll move on to presentations. We have the wonderful opportunity of having some of our students here to talk about coming back to school, particularly after the year that we had last year. And just, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to center student voice and student experience again, because that is so critical to any school board. But I know that this board in particular really values that and really enjoys hearing from students about how what we do here affects them and what matters most in their education right now. So we'll be bringing them in as presenters since we have just the two groups. So welcome aboard. Dr. Moshe, do you want to introduce them or anyone else? Oh, Ms.
Hi, Brooke.
Excellent.
Thank you. I'm Taylor Phillips. I'm the Southwood Middle School principal. I'm looking for a couple of the students that are hopping on. I see one or two. I know a couple conveniently have activities, so they might hop on in a minute. And the question was, how's the school year started? And I thought, well, I have one perspective, and I think you'd rather hear from students and their perspective. So I've asked a few students to come and hop on and share with us just how their year has gone, what it's like to be back in person, and maybe a couple highlights of how their year has gone. I'm going to pop out of order. I see the first student I'll introduce is Callahan, and then I have Amelia, and then if they make it in time from volleyball, Addie and Soleil will hop on as well. So I'm going to introduce Callahan and Amelia, and they're going to just share with us for about a minute just how life at Southwood Middle has been, and hopefully we'll hear some great stuff.
Hi, I'm Callahan Dobmeyer. So far this year, everyone's been like really good about wearing their masks, and I think it's been like a really big transition from being at home all day, every day. And yeah, I think I've been like loving being in person.
Thanks, Callahan. Is there a class that you're particularly enjoying right now? I know you're only a few weeks in.
I think I'm really loving all my classes.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. Amelia is also here. Amelia is new to me, but a really great student. Has really stood out as a natural leader, just like Callahan. And Amelia is going to just take a minute to chat about their experience and maybe share with us favorite class so far.
Hi, I'm Amelia. I've really enjoyed this school year so far, and I love having like the in-person social aspect. My favorite class is probably ceramics, which I have on Wednesdays. And yeah, and sports has been really fun too. And like actually getting to see my teammates and stuff. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming, Amelia. Soleil and Adeline are both in an after-school activity. I'm looking for their names on the roster. So I'll pop over to Mr. Silva, who I think is going to introduce Lauren. No pressure if that's not the case. He's been great. He's new, and I'm so thrilled to have Justin on staff with us.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Phillips. I really appreciate it. And Mr. Lagerstedt, thank you so much for inviting me to introduce myself to the board. I have had the privilege of, obviously I got to interview with Dr. Joe, and I got to meet Brooke. So it's just a pleasure to see you all. And yeah, I'm not one for making too long of speeches. I am a strong advocate for student voice, which is why Lauren is going to tell you about how they have been feeling the school year has been going so far. So Lauren is one of our strongest students and a strong member of our ASB. And I am just thrilled to be able to work with her.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a senior this year. As far as ASB class, we started off the year with freshman orientation, which was really great because this year we had the highest amount of people show up. Recently also, we have had 2 assemblies back to school, and then we also had a pep rally. These have both happened out in the stadium, the COVID safety protocol. Up next, ASB is planning some of our new homecoming traditions, which I'm really excited about. As far as clubs go, we recently had a club fair outside where all the clubs got to set up a booth and we got to talk about like what each club is about. There are many more active clubs this year, like Ecology Club, Art Club, and Flight Club. Many clubs have gained new members from the club fair, and we're also starting to have meetings and come up with projects. Okay, as far as sports goes, our fall sports teams this year have been doing really well. We've had many wins, which is great, and only a few losses. Student sections are phenomenal. They're very large this year. There are very high amounts of school spirit. Due to the amount of people coming to cheer on our Falcons, masks are now required for the football games. So many students are enjoying being able to stay back in person. It feels a bit more normal now, which is which I'm personally thankful for. Lunch has been good. There's been a lot of people choosing to eat outside, and everyone's been following our 4-at-a-table social distancing rule. Overall, the school spirit this year is really great. A lot of students have had a good few weeks back, excited to just be able to go to clubs, go to sports games, and be in person. The main takeaway is just the high level of school spirit that I've seen all week.
Thank you all. It's wonderful to hear from students from both the middle school and the high school. Very much appreciate you joining us and stepping up to talk in front of this wall of faces here and all the names off to the side. Always appreciate hearing from students, and I'm so happy to hear that you all are excited and getting to actually sit down and talk with some of your friends and just experience school, from classes to clubs to sports to just sitting down at a lunch table with 3 of your friends. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's great to hear this straight from students. Thanks for being spokespeople for your classmates.
All right. There we have the brief updates, which again, really appreciate hearing that. We'll move on to public comments. We have several in the Q&A queue already. I'll begin reading those. I'll set our current standard 45-minute timeline on that, and after 45 minutes, we'll see how we're doing and if we want to close off there or keep going. Does that sound good to everyone? Okay. Actually, before we do that, Saul, I know you have a formal report ahead of time. Do you want to chime in about your own personal back to school experience?
Sure. Do you just want me to do the report now?
No, just a little line or two about what it's just been like to have the experience to come back.
Sure. I actually have a lot of stuff from my report that talks about the high school specifically and the district and the students and how they're doing. And I think Lauren and the middle school students did a really good job of kind of explaining what's going on. And I'm definitely going to elaborate on some of that, but I think I'm going to, I don't know, are the middle school students still here?
They've been moved back to standard attendees.
Yeah, okay. I have some questions for them.
You can contact Mrs. Phillips if you want to get back in touch with them, so.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that because they talked about some really good things that are happening on the middle school level. And I want to talk to them about that. But apart from that, I think I'm going to stick to my report.
Sounds great. Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot a little bit like that.
Well, if any of the board members or anybody wants to ask me questions specifically about what's going on now, then I can talk about that if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Sol. I would love to wait until you can share your report and then maybe ask follow-up questions, just because it's hard to guess what you might be ready to share with us. So I really appreciate the invitation. Thanks.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Saul, for putting up with being put up on the spot like that. I'll move on to the Q&A questions. First one here I have from Charlene Davenport Clinton. Regarding the banners at the high school, one, I received an email from Tiffany Harmon, Executive Receptionist, Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, stating, quote, Washington State is a local control state, which means it is up to each individual school district administrators to decide if they will allow the parentheses banners to be shown at the school, end quote. The email has been forwarded to the superintendent and all board members. The display of the banners, including the Black Lives Matter banner, have already been approved by the superintendent and the board. Thank you for sharing that. Maureen Green, Clinton. Why do the middle school children need parents or guardians to go to the high school football games with them? They don't need parental approval for healthcare at school or birth control when they're over 13 years of age. Couldn't they go to a football game with their friends? Oh, thank you for
That's a
sharing
matter that
question.
Mrs. Phillips is working on with students and staff. So they're trying to set up a protocol for students and attending games. So I would leave it to the buildings.
Okay, and just a reminder that these are, this is for public comment. If you have a question, you can email it into the appropriate level in the chain of command to ask that question. And I have to apologize to Charlene Davenport, who had a part 2 here that I missed in glancing through this. So Charlene Davenport Clinton. 2, update on the trademark issue of the BLM banner. Trademarks must be identified to an individual, business, or organization for goods and or services provided. A political PAC provides a service and can be trademarked, as well as chapters of BLM or businesses selling BLM merchandise. As of January this year, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has rejected all applications, even the originator's application, to trademark the 3-word slogan, Black Lives Matter. This is because the slogan fails to function as a trademark and is in the public domain, as outlined in the USPTO Trademark Manual of Examining Procedure, section 1202.04b, widely used messages. And now I'm going to scroll down to make sure that that's all that we have from Charlene, and it appears that it is. So thank you very much. Larry Fox, Freeland. As a retired high school counselor, I wish to congratulate the students who have formed the Queer and Trans Club, taking initiative to create a safe space for LGBTQ students who too often suffer ridicule and harassment. Thank you for sharing that. Clyde Monma, he, him, Clinton. Black Lives Matter to me because white police officers are killing Black men and women without cause at an alarming rate. Why? Because white officers feel that it is justified for them to kill Black people without provocation. Because white officers are motivated to murder Black people. Because they have the power to do so. Because misguided white people make excuses for them. Anyone who says Black Lives Matter but is really saying that Black lives don't matter. There are no buts. There is no justification for saying, but these Black people shouldn't be breaking the law. There is no justification for saying, but police officers have the right to use force whenever they feel the need to do so. There's no justification for saying our kids should not be told about these actions in school. There's no justification for saying that Black Lives Matter, but. Anyone who says Black Lives Matter, but are making excuses which enable, which enable white. There's a skip here to the next comment, still from Aloha Clyde in Clinton. If Black Lives Matter to you, then start by saying Black Lives Matter because. For me, Black Lives Matter because people like George Floyd deserve to be murdered by people like Officer Derek Chauvin. Floyd did not pose any threat, did not offer any resistance, yet he was thrown to the ground handcuffed, and murdered. His crime of trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill is a non-violent crime and one met by a violent death. Why was Floyd murdered? Because white officers feel that it is justified for them to kill Black people without provocation, because white officers are motivated to murder Black people, because they have the power to do so, because misguided white people make excuses for them. Bottom line, if Floyd had been a white man, he would have been read his rights and carefully taken away. No violence, no murder. Remember that Officer Chauvin was found guilty of murder by a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury decided that Floyd was killed by Chauvin, not because of drugs. That's all that I have there from this. Thank you for sharing that. If there's more to that, I apologize for getting through too soon on this.
Brooke, it's a little further down.
Oh, thought I had gone all the way to the bottom. It must have come in since I did. Remember that continuing from Aloha Clyde. Remember that Officer Chauvin was found guilty of murder by a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury decided that Floyd was killed by Chauvin, not because of drugs in his system or any other excuse that some white people use when they really mean that Black lives don't matter. For me, Black lives matter because Andre Hill did not deserve to be shot and killed by Officer Adam Coy, who claims he mistook a cell phone for a gun. Andre Hill had his hand raised. He posed no threat. He was cooperating with the officer's requests. Why was Hill murdered? Because white officers feel that it is justified for them to kill Black people without provocation, because white officers are motivated to murder Black people because they have the power to do so, because misguided white people make excuses for them. To be clear, if Hill had been a white man, the officer would have apologized profusely and gone on his way. No gun drawn, no murder. Black lives matter to me because Black Army Second Lieutenant Karen Nazario, who was driving his new car when pulled over by two white police officers. They did so because they said he did not have a car license plate in the rear of the car, when actually his new car had a temporary license clearly visible in the back window. Nazario was pepper sprayed, thrown to the ground, handcuffed, threatened with weapon, and told he might face the electric chair. All of this despite the fact that Nazario was in full Army uniform, despite the fact that he offered no resistance. This was just one small step. An apology, sorry, but the text box only allows a limited number of words. I absolutely understand that, Mr. Clyde. Also, you are closing in on your time limit here, at which point we will end this, but I'll see how much more I can get in here. Why was Nazario treated in this horrific manner? Because white officers feel that it is justified for them to abuse Black people without provocation, because white officers are motivated to abuse Black people because they have the power to do so, because misguided white people make excuses for them. Clearly, if Nazario had been white, the white officers would have apologized profusely and gone on his way. No violent behavior, no physical or verbal abuse. The behavior of white people toward Black people has been going on for hundreds of years. NAACP records show that from 1882 to 1968, 4,742 Black people were lynched. Historians agree that the actual number is much greater. Photos of lynching show white people celebrating their horrendous deeds. White people and children routinely gathered as crowds to view these lynchings as if they were on an outing after church. At this point, I think that we have, I apologize, I did not start a timer, but I believe that we are at about 5 minutes. So thank you, Mr. Clyde, for sharing your comments. I will move on to the next one. Mitch Wood Langley, 1 of 15. So that will help me keep track of them. Thank you. I grew up here. I spent all 13 years in this school district, from Mrs. Jacobson's kindergarten class to Mr. Westling's chemistry class and so many in between. I went to CMA Island Church. I attended youth events at SWAG, and a big part of my life identifies with the island. I moved back here recently and have my kids in the district. This is my community, and I am mad as HE double hockey sticks by what's happening in this community. I am furious about people believing what they hear on the fake news and social media. I try to live my life some spiritual, moral, and ethical principles, which I believe specifically pertain to the issues in our community and school district. These philosophies are also some of the fundamental principles of my church. The first couple are just common sense concepts. First, people are fallible. If If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm they may have caused. 7 of 15, just to keep people aware of where we are. That's just simple common sense. Next, one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. Again, pretty basic. Now the next 3, these are more specific to our problems lately, and I believe many listening will agree with me. Please pay close attention because the devil is in the details. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. Let that sink in. This is talking about all of our freedoms, and it will be a cold day in hell before I relinquish my freedoms. Next, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. Yes, that's right, prevail over laws and institutions. And lastly, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will. I hope you'll contemplate these core beliefs, which I think strongly represent the concerns of many in this community. Now, some people listening and some here on the board might be upset by my next statement because they believe their free speech is all that matters, or their beliefs. Looking through for the next comment on in here, 14 of 15, and religious freedom are all that matter. But I would like to directly address the actions taken by USL. To the students of USL and to those that allowed it to exist, I support you 100%, and the philosophies of my church, the Satanic Temple, also support you. Thank you, Mitch Wood, they, them, Langley. Thank you for sharing that comment. I'm just going through to mark these as answered so it's easier to find unanswered ones. So give me just a moment. A reminder as I'm going through this real quick, that all comments must include both the full name of the person making the statement and also their location. Almost done. Okay. Sunnysides, Clinton. You need to turn on cameras and mics and allow us to speak our own comments. A recorded statement by Sarah Albertson, Managing Attorney, OSPI, Department of Equity and Civil Rights Office, was played for public comment at the August 25th school board meeting. Sarah stated that if a school allows banners to be displayed, then all banners should be displayed. Example, if a pride flag is flown but other flags denied, that is a viewpoint discrimination issue. I don't know about board policy, but this seems like a point of order. This is a public school and we need to focus on reading, writing, math, science, and critical thinking skills. You're wasting time reading people's frivolous comments that have nothing to do with our students' future and how they're going to make a living. I would like to request that South Louis School District consider that a critical thinking and training skills class be added to the course list. Thank you, Sunny, for sharing those comments and the reminder of what was played at the last in-person meeting. I would just like to say that I sincerely hope and believe that our teachers are teaching critical thinking in each and every one of their classes. Laurel Ekenorud, Greenbank. What do you think of the complaint filed with the Educational Service District? There are a group of people outside the meeting room and they are wondering as well. Just making sure that there aren't any more comments from Laurel. I will note that that the board and superintendent did receive a complaint filed via email approximately 20 minutes before this meeting, maybe 30. I have glanced at it. I have not looked any further, but I will note that personnel matters are not matters of public comment. Complaints about the board, complaints about the superintendent are referred to the board. Complaints about the board are referred to the educational service district. And any complaints that we receive in that manner will be referred in that direction. They will not be commented on in public, just as any other personnel matter would not be. Larry Christensen Freeland asks, will you read the complaint submitted by Margaret King Clinton, Barry Farley Clinton, Larry Christensen Freeland? If not, you need to allow us to speak for up to 5 minutes each. You do control the mute option. Point of order, you're reading a purely racist statement. Okay. As noted, complaints submitted will be referred to the proper authorities to discuss those complaints and will not be remarked upon in public as they are personnel matters. Emily Ewell Clinton, why are parents being excluded from entering the school buildings? Please don't use COVID since protocols are in place for all. I'm not certain exactly what you mean on that, but if you have questions about specific buildings, you can certainly address them to the principal of that building. If it is district buildings, to Dr. Moshe. Marshall Goldberg, I've got a comment here from you, but I don't, oh, Marshall Goldberg, Oak Harbor. I went to your website today and wondered if school board directors could each post a brief bio on the site about their backgrounds. It would certainly help the public appreciate the varied educational, occupational experiences that they bring to the board. Thank you for your consideration of this request. It's actually a very interesting suggestion. Might be something that we discuss doing at a later date. Thank you. I missed one by Emily Ewell and Clinton when I read her comment earlier. Our country was not founded on racism. Please read excerpt of the Declaration of Independence to educate students. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Thank you, Emily. I will note that at this time, there was also a law in place that Black people, slaves were counted as 3/5 of one person for voting purposes. So there were certainly some issues there. Let's see here. Lindsay Krug, Langley. I have not been able to log into the board meetings for a few months, but I just wanted to jump online tonight and say how positive the return to in-person learning has been for my 5th and 3rd graders. Thank you for finally getting and keeping our kids back in person full time and keeping them safe in the process. There's nothing more important than them thriving and learning after the past year and a half. The teachers and staff have been amazing with them and their challenges with returning to the social and academic pressures of normal school life. The 5-6 open house was a great idea, and having parents live a day in the life of their kiddos with class changes, etc., was brilliant and hilarious. We all could benefit from a day back in school. Thank you, Ms. Krug, for sharing that. Bob O'Brien Langley. I want to thank the board and staff for following the science, keeping our kids safe, and empowering our kids to bring their best selves to school every day. Sharon Abreu, Orcas Island supporter of USL. Civil discussions of the issues impacting our society right now is good for critical thinking. They are really good for the students, as is practicing language of empathy. Thank you for sharing that. Margaret King Clinton. Over the course of the last several months, we have asked many times how the decision was made regarding hanging the Black Lives Matter banner at the school. At the June 23rd board meeting, board member Andrea Downs stated that there was a vote by the school board where all unanimously agreed to the banner being displayed. Damian Green denied there was ever a vote, rather a consensus that it was Superintendent Joe Moshe's decision. At the board meeting, July 28, Joe stated that it wasn't just her decision, it was the students' First Amendment rights to hang the political banner at the high school. Joe stated that it is the students' First Amendment rights as determined by the Supreme Court in Tinker versus Des Moines. Too long in the Puget Sound area. To continue Ms. King's comment. The finding in this case regarding students protesting the Vietnam War by wearing black armbands was protected free speech. Students are allowed to voice their political and religious freedoms at school through speech, clothing, and handing out literature. However, the political Black Lives Matter banner, though it may be condoned by many students, is on public school property. The public school itself and its property must remain neutral as per Washington State Constitution. It now our understanding from public disclosure requests that the initiation of the original BLM was a local businessman who reached out to Dr. Moshe. This refutes the claim that this was student-led and requested. It was led by adults in the community, and the board has been covering their tracks trying to hide the fact Dr. Moshe personally made the decision.
Brooke, can I clarify some of the statements in there? So the statement is correct that I did state that it was a vote for the school board. And I was immediately in that meeting corrected and reminded that we actually as a board did not vote. We made the determination that it was Superintendent Moshe's decision. Furthermore, the discussion of the banner was student driven and it was initiated by a student created petition that was present at, I don't remember exactly, but a couple meetings prior.
Yeah, and if I could just reiterate it, it was always that first hanging of the banner was the superintendent's decision. And I remember very clearly that it was students who brought it forward to the board, and the board made it clear that the hanging of anything on the school walls is up to the principal, and on the school grounds would be up to the superintendent. And I said very clearly at that meeting, then it's my intention to hang the banner. But it did come to us from students, and now it's completely back in the students' hands. So it's the ASB working on what banners they choose to put up and when. It is no longer the district. So we have given that back to the ASB.
So the statement is absolutely correct. I did say that, but I am also on the record now saying that I misspoke at that meeting and that my fellow board members also corrected me in that moment.
And the other piece of it is the public records information that was requested does show that I asked the board to put it on a board agenda because I felt it was a matter of import now that the board needed to talk about it, which they did. Though people made comments back and forth, it was the board discussion in public that was the actual discussion.
And as Damian mentioned, the vote was that we all agreed that it was your decision.
And it wasn't a vote, it was a nod, right?
Yes.
It wasn't a motion seconded and voted on.
Yeah. The outcome of that discussion was that we all agreed. Yes, thank you for that correction. I'm going to continue on here. Sarah McDougall, Freeland. Listening to the students about their enthusiasm at being back to school and the excitement of school spirit is gratifying. It's disappointing to listen to the criticisms of the school district. I prefer to concentrate on the positives and move forward with providing excellent education for all students. Thank you, board members and Dr. Moshe. Preston Osman, Freeland. I'm grateful for the patience, intelligence, and candor of the sitting school board. The South End is lucky to have you. Gwendy Hastings, Freeland. I enjoyed attending the 5-6 open house. I did ask some of the teachers if they were wiping down desks, chairs, and offering hand sanitizer to students regularly to keep our students safe and help make it possible for in-person learning to continue. All the teachers I met were friendly, informative, and did a great job showing an overview of what our students are doing in class. Thank you. thank you for sharing that experience. The only comments I have here are from those who have already made comments during this public comment period. As we do in person, we don't want this to turn into a discussion back and forth. So this is a chance for the public to comment to us once. I'll hold this open if there are any more coming in. But those who have already spoken, if you have more to say, you can certainly either send us an email or speak up at the next business meeting. Mary Mitchell, Clinton. I appreciate the Zoom meetings as well as the reading of the questions, as it keeps the meetings much more calm. As to social justice, I appreciate our youth being taught history as it really was lived. There are so many injustices placed against Black and brown people, such as red line districts, Jim Crow laws, and then now of police brutalizing more people of color. I appreciate that the students themselves want to learn about history as it was. Thank you for sharing that. Tom Walker, Clinton. Just a word of thanks to the board for calm and perseverance in trying times. I'll hold on just a few more minutes to see if there's anything else being typed up by folks who have not yet had the opportunity to make public comment. I know that typing can take quite a long while, so I'm trying to be very careful to let people have time to comment before we move on to the remainder of our business meeting. I'll give it one more minute until 7:20, and then we'll move on. John and Nicole Dobmeyer Langley. Thank you, Southerby School Board, staff, and students for your continued support of inclusive practices. Student safety within a rigorous learning environment is of utmost concern, and we are thankful for your support. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Now we will close public comment period. Thank you all for sharing your comments. It's very important for us to hear them. And I understand that many people in the community want others in the community to hear them as well. So thank you very much. We'll move on to our new business now. The first point of new business is Memorandum 2120-04, approval of the contracts with PSE for 2021 through 2023. Do I have a motion in regards to this?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion of the contracts with PSE?
Thank you for the work. It's great to know that we made progress this year in an early and convenient time period.
I echo that entirely, Damien. I want to give thanks to the negotiating teams from both sides and PSE themselves, as well as the administration for, coming to an agreement that everyone is happy with, or at least satisfies everyone. Any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor of Memorandum 2122-04, approval of the contracts with PSE for 2021 through 2023, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2122-04, approval of the contracts with PSE for 2021 through 2023 has been approved. Next up, we have Memorandum 2122-05, approval of the policy 2108, Learning Assistant Program updates. We discussed this at the previous board workshop, so I believe that this is actually a second reading, but can we, Dr. Moshe, can you confirm that?
It is a second reading. You workshopped it.
Yep. So do I have a motion in regards to this memorandum?
I'll move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Been moved, seconded, and thirded. Is there any discussion or questions on this? Saul, I want to make this very clear, Saul, that you are welcome to comment and ask questions on any of these. I'm not going to call on you for each one because I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to leave this an open invitation. If you have any comments or questions, please share them.
No, it looks good to me. I looked over it, so I like
figured
it.
you
I think it's definitely important to realize that in this moment where we're dealing with a pandemic, we have to take that into consideration when it comes to students' needs and include that. And so I looked over it. I don't have any problems with it. I definitely support it. And I think I represent the students when I say that, I hope, but that's all I have to say about it. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so all those in favor of Memorandum 2122-05, approval of the policy 2108, Learning Assistance Program updates, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2122-05, approval of the policy 2108, Learning Assistance Program updates has been approved. Next on the list, Memorandum 2122-06, approval of the policy 2418, waiver of high school graduation credits. Do I have a motion in regards to this?
Move to approve?
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions on this?
I see that we've pulled out the his, her pronouns for theys. That looks great. Everything else logistically looks pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. All those in favor of Memorandum 2122-06, approval of the policy 2418, waiver of high school graduation credits, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum, oh, go ahead.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. There's a typo and I just am dying to call it out before we complete this approval. If we could have an indent under the word homelessness so that it goes into the bullet list that it is meant to accompany.
Oh,
I see it. Yeah.
Thank you.
yes.
But given that change, I say aye. Sorry for the late notice. I just saw it.
No, that's not a problem. Since you interrupted the vote on that, let's just make it official and go through and
Begging your pardon.
with
Thank you.
that tweak, with that change.
Thank you.
All those in favor of Memorandum 2122-06, approval of the policy 2418, waiver of high school graduation credits with the one formatting change, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, Memorandum 2122-06, approval of the policy 2418, waiver of high school graduation credits, has been approved with that one change to formatting.
Thank you, Marnie.
Yes,
Thank you. I appreciate your
Good.
patience with that brief hesitation.
good catch. Memorandum 2122-07, approval of the updates to policy 2420, grading and progress reports. Do I have a motion on this?
I'll move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions on this? You can see we got the parents, guardians in there, and more inclusive pronoun use at the end. Okay. All those in favor of Memorandum 2122-07, approval of the updates to policy 2420, grading and progress reports, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay. Memorandum 2122-07, approval of the updates to policy 2420, grading and progress reports, has been approved. Now, sorry, just a moment. I need to open this up again. It closed up on me, and I can't quite read the one on the screen. We're now moving on to Memorandum 2122-08, approval of the updates to policy 3122, excused and unexcused absences. Do I have a motion on this?
Move to approve excused and unexcused absences policy.
It has been moved. Do I have a second?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions?
Thank you for making the correction to the 4-week period back to the original policy. And I wish that we were able to maintain some sort of database on these corrections, because these corrections are going to continue to happen over the course of a long time.
Yeah, and I do want to note that I have not yet gotten that email up the chain to WASDA. That is still on my list to do. I did talk to Andrea on this, and child on there is used. Actually, Andrea, why don't I turn it over to you to explain that?
Yeah, so my recollection with this is that school districts don't only serve school-age children, but they also provide funding pass-throughs for birth to 3 and 3 to 5 services, depending on the model. So you may have situations where you are working with and serving students who are children who are not necessarily students, but are counted under South Whidbey School District's count for funding purposes. So like a great example of that would be my son, when he was 1 year old, qualified for physical therapy services through TLC. So he was enrolled in South Whidbey School District as a student in order to access funding to pay for the physical therapy services.
Thank you. We were all very sure that you would know the reasoning behind that. So it seems like child is being used intentionally here. So we should leave that as is my belief.
Would you
Thank
like
you,
me to
Andrea.
take out student then in all the parentheses? Because that was added. Should we remove it or just keep the two together?
I would defer to Andrea's expertise in this. On whether we should add student in the parentheses there or just keep it as child.
I think you could do either, or you just wouldn't want it to only read student.
May I offer a sort of a parallel structure suggestion where we use parent/guardian, we might use child/student for similar to indicate either or.
That works for me.
Okay, I'll change all the parentheses to slash and keep the student in there, just child/student for the final. Thank you so much. No problem.
So then we'll need to have a motion to update that so we can approve it.
I will move to approve policy number 3122 with the changes to add child/student.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second
second.
that.
It's been moved, seconded, and thirded. We've had the discussion. All those in favor of memorandum 2122-08, approval of the updates to
Hey,
policy-
Brooke, there is one discussion. I just want to make sure that her motion is covering all child student highlights in the policy. Not just a single one, but there's many.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I said with the changes.
Right,
to
well,
include.
it didn't sound like you said multiple, just sounded like it just meant changes on one.
Well, thank you for the clarification. Yes, I think that is absolutely what we mean. Any other discussion or questions to be had? Okay. All those in favor of memorandum 2122-08, approval of the updates to policy 3122, excused and unexcused absences with the change to child/student in each case, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Nay. Memorandum 2122-08, approval of updates to policy 3122, excused and unexcused absences with the change to child/student in each case has been approved. Next on the list is memorandum 2122-10, approval of the updates to policy 5011, sexual harassment of district staff prohibited. Do I have a motion in regards to that memorandum?
Move to approve.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or comments?
Can I say something about it?
Certainly, please.
So I think that this is really, really important, especially for knowing that there's friends of mine who have had experiences with sexual harassment coming from staff, and knowing that there are avenues that they can use so that those people can be held accountable, I think is really important. And I think we need to take that kind of thing seriously. And I just want to make sure that my fellow students who have experienced sexual harassment are represented here, and that they have an avenue that they can use.
The student policy of the similar student policy is in the 3000 series. Just a moment, I'll pull it up, or I'll find the exact number, but there is a policy around students in this specific, it is 3205.
That is the policy for students. We also have a hotline. So if we have any students who are experiencing any kind of harassment, there is an anonymous hotline. And those posters are in every building, every office. So we'd want to make sure that if students are experiencing any kind of harassment, that they report it, and they may do so anonymously.
Well, thank you, Sol, for bringing up the parallels between this policy and the student policy, because teachers are our first models. And so these are the expectations that are set for our staff in the district. And so this is just as important to students, because this is modeling the behavior of what should be happening in schools and what happens if there is a breach of that policy. So thank you.
So Brooke, in rereading this policy, I was trying to think back to our workshop as to why we decided to eliminate the annual, because I'm sitting here trying to figure out exactly what holds the superintendent to doing the report.
Remember, we talked about this as a policy review, and you have this on no other policy. It's not about a report of sexual harassment. This is about a report to the board about the efficacy of this policy and procedure, which you don't have on any other policies and procedures. That's what you talked about at the workshop.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It's about reviewing the policy rather than being updated on specific reports?
I'm not going to pull them out of the hat right now, but I thought we did have a couple other policies where they're set in stone to review certain things on an annual basis, such as I think their WIAA is one of them. There's a couple others that are in my mind, but
there are several actually, Damien, and Christy has them on a rotating list, and we
Right.
end up putting them on board agendas as they come up over the year. But they're not to review the policy. It's the policy indicates that we are to report about whatever it is in the policy. Not that's why this statement was questioned by all of you. It's because this is about the policy itself, not a report on incidences that may occur that are dealt with based on this policy, which we do. And there is a Title IX report that Dan does annually, as well as the, it's not quite the same, but he does several reports based on his role as HR.
all right, I'm just trying to make sure that I know where a report would come from if we had this occur, and how long it would take to be notified based on the occurrence, I guess, is what I'm trying to look at, to just so that it doesn't get brushed aside and we're not looking at it.
You mean a report of an incident?
That, or even, I mean, you know, it could go on for 10
So if we
years.
look up, if you look up in the paragraph that says a formal complaint, it's the one right above notice and training. Nope, you're past it, Christy. You had it on there.
Down.
Yeah,
Right there.
right there, stop. A formal complaint filed on behalf of a student, et cetera, it goes to the district Title IX Civil Rights Compliance Officer, that's Dan. Reports of disability, discrimination, or harassment will be referred to the 504 coordinator. All of those are reported on an annual basis to the board. I don't have the dates offhand, but that is the part of the reports that come to the board on an annual basis.
So this alteration to this policy that we're proposing by removing the words "and annual," it does not alter the frequency with which the board receives updates about incidents covered under this policy. It just edits the frequency with which the board hears a review of the use and efficacy of this policy.
That's correct.
Well,
Thank you.
and I actually just looked up 3205 because thanks to Saul's question, I was looking at it, and it has an annual report on the use and efficacy of this policy and related procedures as well. So if we want to, so maybe we can bring that up on a future policy note to change that if we like this change. Damien, are you solid with this change, or would you?
I think I'm going to abstain on this vote until I have time, a little bit more time to really think about it, because I'm trying to comprehend here in full. I heard what Dr. Mocha said, but I just don't see it in that paragraph the same way. And so you guys can feel free to move forward. Me personally, I probably will abstain at this time.
So the way that I read it, and Marnie, let me know if I'm just echoing what you said, but the section of this portion is based purely on the policy review, not incident review. And so this section is just saying, this is a policy that we look at every single year. And we are saying that we want to remove the annual report to the board regarding the policy, not about instances. Because
If you just,
instances,
look at the policy of, I believe it calls for an annual report. And if you want an annual report on any sexual harassment, why don't we just add the sentence? If that's what you're going for. Again,
that's what
I
I'm
think
looking
it's in this policy already, which is why Dan reports on it.
mhm.
If we look up toward the top, Dan, if I know you're there, I'm not sure when you report, but I know you report, and it's based on policy.
Yeah, I think it's usually in the spring every year that we report this information. But yes, what this is, it says policy review under the paragraph heading that it has there. So you're really reviewing the policy and making sure the policy is working rather than the incidents that have happened. So it's really about, is the policy appropriate? You're reviewing policy in this one, nothing else.
And I thank you for that, Dan, because I think that's part of the issue for me, is to keep up with it on an annual basis, because it is so meaningful to so many people that to stay current means, look at it once a year or once every on a biannual basis. But I think that is the impact that the WASA is trying to influence on us, is that we are staying in touch with it on an annual basis.
Yeah, and I would suggest that rather than the superintendent making a report, that the board review the policy on an annual basis to see if there's been changes made or anything like that. That's really what you're reviewing, is a policy itself.
I will agree to that.
I would agree to that.
That sounds very reasonable.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that wording.
So I'm thinking if we change out this whole superintendent will make a report, we do annually, the board will review, you just have to give this policy.
Yeah, that sounded good, Christy.
My suggestion is that you review it at the same time you get the report.
Yeah.
That would make the most sense. And if we scroll up to the top, I believe it indicates when the reporting is.
We'll have to make a few more tweaks to the wording in the policy review paragraph, because the second sentence also refers to the report.
Brooke, might it make sense, given the changes we're making, to bring it back at our next workshop so we can review the language and look at the changes?
Yeah, so if you'd like the companion policy that you're quoting, we can bring them both back.
Yep.
Yes, please.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
So Brooke, what was the number of that one that you?
3205. Yeah.
3205, great. So Christy's got that. We'll bring it back in October.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor in regards to this. Since it has been moved and seconded, it cannot just be withdrawn. I would entertain a motion to table this until the next board workshop.
I'll second that.
Does Brooke need a motion? I
do
move to
need a
table this. I move to table this. I'm looking for the fine print. Discussion of memorandum 2122-10, approval of the updates to policy 5011, sexual harassment of district staff prohibited, until the next board workshop.
Or
And
the
I will
person
second.
or the person who made the motion can withdraw their motion in the second.
I don't believe that, I believe once it's been seconded, it has to be, it can't just be withdrawn like that, but I will look that up before our next meeting. We have a motion on the floor and it has been seconded. Do we have any discussion to be had on this? The motion to table it. Okay, all those in favor of tabling memorandum 2122-10, approval of the updates to policy 5011, sexual harassment of district staff prohibited, until the next board workshop, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2122-10, approval of the updates to policy 5011, sexual harassment of district staff prohibited, has been tabled until our next workshop. Last point of new business is memorandum 2122-11, approval of the access control replacement. Do I have a motion in regards to this memorandum?
Move to approve so that we can have discussion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded. Now is the time for discussion. Damien, since you mentioned it, do you want to go first?
Yes, if we could get a clarification as to, a few years ago, I thought we had installed a new keyless entry system. What's going on with that one, and what will this one do to make the entry system, I guess, enriched or better or enlightened or whatever it may be? That would be great to find out.
I'll try to answer that for you, Damien. Yes, we did. We actually put in an access system a few years back. And what's happened is that that system is failing, predominantly at the secondary athletic hallway, places like that. the access system isn't working. So we have coaches and PE teachers who go out into the field and can't get back into the buildings. And the problem with the current system is it's a proprietary system. There's only one manufacturer, one representative, and we're having difficulties getting any type of support for it. Matter of fact, if we call them for support, it's $500 an hour to talk to them on the phone. And so we have two choices here. We can, patch up the one we have, and according to Ian's report, it's about $30,000 to fix the ones that are currently broken. Or we can go with a new system that is non-proprietary. And that basically means that we can use different manufacturers for supplies, different service reps to repair the equipment. I also understand that it integrates better with the other systems we have in the building. We also pay $3,000 a year licensing fee to the current company because it is proprietary, which you wouldn't with the new one. So there are a lot of benefits into going to a new system, but it's, we can spend less money and patch up what we have, or we can try to go with the new one. But we have doors that
Right.
just doesn't work.
Yeah, he's been trying to patch it for a month and has had no parts, no service. So that's been what we've been attempting to do. And because we've been unable to, Ian researched this and made this recommendation.
No, I'm good with that. I'm wondering though too, Dan, if this has any more bells and whistles that we don't currently have.
Yes, it does. I understand that because it is integrated, it's going to be a lot easier for employee use. I know right now that Monique has a really difficult time creating access cards that work well. The new system wouldn't have that. It's also, I understand, more visible over the network that you can see. So there are some benefits, and it integrates into our camera systems and all the other equipment we have in the building. But right now, the door access is a standalone process because it is proprietary and different. And it's the same manufacturer that we get our security cameras from and all the other, equipment we have in the building.
Okay,
so I
last
do understand it integrates.
Yeah, last question, I guess, was I don't remember that we had a monthly fee for the current keyless system that we were using. If we do, did we have any contract that we're breaking, or is there any guarantee of any refund due to the fact that we're not satisfied with their system in this time period that we're deciding to change?
No, it's basically just a licensing fee, and there is, like I say, there is no support for the system, so we don't have an ongoing maintenance agreement or anything with them. It's just because it is proprietary, we do, have to pay for that fee. So it will actually save some money over time by not having to do that. And I understand for me, and that it's a much better system than the one we have. And ultimately, we're gonna have doors that open when people need to come in the building. I know we've been having doors propped open and all those things because, if you can't get in the building, you're not gonna close the door behind you half the time. So we do have some security issues currently because the system doesn't work effectively. I know he's been trying to get those things to work and it just hasn't worked.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, and it is coming from a piggyback contract with SIPC, which is a cooperative that we get our data processing services through. So that makes it really nice that we don't have to actually go out with our own RFP, because that takes about 6 months. So it should be a little quicker, though in this environment, it will probably still take months to get the parts and get them installed. It's just been a really slow process for Public Works lately.
So I have to admit that I had some sticker shock looking at the price on this. So I was concerned that about the budgetary implications, and Mr. Pullman, thankfully you are exactly the person to talk about that. I wanted to make sure that this would be coming from Capital Improvements Fund, I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong on that. And I wanted to make sure that our Capital Improvements Fund, or wherever it's coming from, can handle that, and that it won't have negative impacts on other things that we want to do this year and beyond.
Yeah, yeah, it's expensive. anything we do with public works, prevailing wage laws, you'll see that half the cost is installation costs. Very expensive in this environment. And all our projects, are like that. It's always a surprise when you see it. No, capital projects, it'll come from that. And as you'll see, we have a strong fund balance going into the coming year with another levy collection coming up. The commercial construction almost stopped the last year because of COVID and supply chain issues and all those things. So we have funds sitting there that we didn't allocate in the last year that will pick this up and not affect any projects that JJ may have coming up.
Excellent. Thank you. I just want to make sure that when we're making these particularly relatively large purchases that we're looking ahead, and I know that you do, but I want to do my due diligence and make sure that I'm asking the right questions.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate the question about adequate funding, and especially in regards to the prioritization of improvements for our physical facilities. But because of the security concerns related to propping doors open, I can see that this is directly tied to student safety, and therefore I can understand why it would be a priority. I have a question about disposal or dispensation of the old system, the aspects of the old system that are not broken. Is there any kind of outlet for those other than a dumpster?
It's actually integrating some of what's already there. So things that will be replaced are the panels, the actual panels on the door. But for example, we don't have to replace the printer that does the cards. We don't have to replace each individual card. Does need a new server. So there is some, but for example, they'll integrate into the automatic door openers that, click when you pass the card over them. They won't have to replace those, things like that. And that's the beauty of this, is that it is not proprietary. So what is there that we can use, they will use. And it does integrate into the camera system. It's the same company actually. So it's got some really nice features. I mean, it's again, as we all know, technology changes rapidly. So it's got some improvements that will enhance our security.
And Joe, any working items would be surplus, correct? They wouldn't just be.
Right. If they actually have a value, they would be surplus, but and whatever that is, Ian knows that process and handles that process of surplusing any technology equipment.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say student, staff, safety of the buildings is one of the big reasons we invested in this a couple of years ago. And it's not the first time that things have gone awry with vendors and so forth. So tell Ian I appreciate his work in being attentive to the issue and in restoring the safety back into our school system. I appreciate all of his efforts.
Are there any other comments, questions? So I know this doesn't exactly affect students quite as much, but going in and out with a coach would certainly.
Well, actually, every day we have to deal with these doors. And I can tell you from personal experience that those cards do not work with those doors. It makes it a little bit interesting getting in and out of the building for different classes. So I definitely appreciate the upgrade. I definitely think that the teachers will appreciate it. I'm not very fiscally smart about these things, but the price tag does look pretty significant. But I think you addressed that really well, and I would say that I definitely I would really appreciate this, especially when it comes to security and makes it easier for us to get in and out of the buildings. So I definitely support this.
Excellent. And thank you for setting me right on how this applies directly to students. I appreciate that very much. Okay, is there any other comments or questions? All right. All those in favor of Memorandum 2122-11, approval of the access control replacement, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2122-11, approval of the access control replacement has been approved. We'll now move on to our reports, starting with Mr. Poolman's financial and enrollment report. Mr. Poolman.
Thank you. So this is our August report, and I remind you, we run on a fiscal year that starts September 1 through August 31. So this is closing up the 2021 school year. It'll be the 12th month of our fiscal year. So basically, if we look at revenue, we're at about 97% of budget, and we knew we're going to be low for various reasons we talked about. But also our expenditures only came in at about 88%. So that was very beneficial. And if we look at revenue, you can see that in the lower left, the blue line is the current year that we were below revenue from previous 2 years, almost every month this year. And we're actually down about $1 million from our revenue collection from a prior year. But again, we knew those things going in, and we talked about why those were down. One thing I do want to mention is it could have been worse, but the state and OSBI decided to do some revenue stabilization. And for our district, that meant almost $800,000 in funds that we would not have had otherwise. Because enrollment, if we would have had just our enrollment refunding based upon the number of kids we had, it would have been $424,000 less. And transportation, which is based on student ridership, because a lot of kids weren't riding, we were in a remote situation, we would have received a lot less there. So they gave districts additional funds to kind of stabilize them. And for us, it was about 800,000. 152 of that was federal funds for the CARES or the ESSER Act. And we have more of those funds coming this year. On the expenditure side, we're about 91% with payroll. Payroll is down about 800,000 from the year prior, a direct result of being remote, less payroll costs as classified staff weren't in the buildings as much, working as much. And then the non-employee costs, only about 74% of what we normally would have seen. And that was just, we bought less things. The utility costs were down, the supplies were down, the services were down. In that environment that we were in last year, there was just a lower expenditure. Just a quick breakdown of how do we spend our money. And if you look at the teaching activities, that's the bulk of where we spend our money. About 11 million of the 18 million is in direct teaching costs. And then the next few are also directly related to teaching. It's the principal administration and their office spaces, the guidance, the counselors, health services. And then we get into the operations of transportation of the buildings, maintenance, utilities. So it gives you kind of an idea of what the priorities are as we go through our budget process every year and create that budget. Where does the money go? We look at it in the big picture. 88% of our cost is salary and benefits for employees. 3% goes to supplies, 8.7% purchase services, and 0.1% in travel. And if we look at that over time, you'll see that that blue is getting larger. At one time we were about 80%. And out of that 88%, 54% of that is for certificated salaries, 17% for classified, and the rest for employee benefits, taxes, that things go along with that. So the other part is purchase services, and kind of give you an idea what that is. 28% of that cost goes to utilities. So that's electricity, et cetera, water, sewer in our building. Running Start is money that just funnels through the district. It's students that go to college, their junior and senior years. We pay the colleges, we get the money, but it's an expenditure for us. The green is insurance, and that has become larger and larger every year as it becomes, we're part of a risk pool. And as the risk across the state increases, so does our cost for insurance. And then the food service management, Chartwell's, is about 8%. The orange is some grant funded things, and then we repairs, employee training. With SIPSI, which you had mentioned as a cooperative, is our Skyward accounting student system. And then, things like audit services, our ALE program, kind of make up the rest. And then the other is just all the money that's spent in buildings for services, a variety of things that we do, whether it's copy machines or whatever it might be. Budget status report. So this is just a breakdown of our revenue and expenditures. We raised $20,078,000 and we spent $18,760,000, which leaves us with a fund balance of about $4,999,000 for the year, which grew predominantly because of that regionalization or that stabilization funds that we received, the $800,000. Had we not received that, it probably would have been about a break even for the year. And then the balance sheet, just asset and liabilities, same thing. It just, where's our revenue and what liabilities do we have and the balance for each of those. And I won't go through each of these individually because we kind of break it down later. The other funds, so capital projects, you'll see that we have a ending fund balance about $2 million. We received $2.3 million and only spent about 1.3 of it during the year. Debt service, $651. There's no expenditure until December, so there will be an influx from capital projects prior to that. ASB, good news here, that balance has grown. You notice we were about 35,000 roughly for the last several months. So that's trying to bring funds back in now that we have students back in the building and things are going on. And then transportation vehicle fund, had expected to expend those funds because we have ordered 2 large buses, have been expecting them any day for the last month. They should show up pretty soon, but that'll take a large percentage of that or almost all of that transportation vehicle fund. And then the private purpose trust fund, which doesn't change much. That's money donated for student scholarships, and we spend the interest on it on a yearly basis. So it maintains about that $785 on an annual basis. Also want to tell you where we are with enrollment. So we took enrollment on the 4th day of September, and September is always a little iffy on the numbers, especially this year starting before Labor Day. I think it confused a few people. So October is a better number, but I'll show you September. So in basic education, we had budgeted 1,088 students, and we actually have 1,074. So we're down about 14 from what we had budgeted in basic education. But on the other side of it, if we go to ALE, we had budgeted 59 and we were about 71. So we're up approximately 12. And what we saw was a lot of shifting the week before and actually the first week of school of people moving from one program to the other, depending upon their beliefs at that time. So if we combine those, we are about 1145. We had budgeted a little over 1147. So we're down about 2.5 from our budgeted amount. So we're really quite close to where we thought we would be. So I went through and I looked at what if I compared where we are in September to where we were in June. So if I took kindergarten and moved them to first grade in September, do we have more or fewer kids? And what I found was it didn't change much except for a few. 5th grade's down about 10 and 10th grade's down about 10 and then 11th grade is down 20, but we know that's running start. That happens every single year. We anticipate that. So then I started wondering, okay, 5th grade, why are they down 10 kids? Where did they go? What happened with them? Whoops, that wasn't a good thing to do. So I looked at withdrawals and entries. So we had 4 kids come to us in 5th grade this year after September, and we had 15 that had left. And out of those 15, 6 went to homeschool, 1 went to Wellington, 3 to Waldorf, 1 moved off island, don't know where, 1 went to Republic, Moses Lake, Arizona, and then there's 1 we just don't know. So difference about 11 kids, which is very similar to that 10 we had seen before. So then I looked at it a little further. What does that mean? Well, I found it interesting. Out of those 15 kids, 12 of those kids are kids that had come within the last couple of years to the district. And out of those 12, 8 of them came last September. with 4 of them coming from Waldorf because of their program closing down. Homeschool. We had somebody moved in, then they moved to Arizona. Somebody moved from Tacoma, moved off island, moved from Moses Lake to Moses Lake. So you can kind of see that a lot of them came in recently, but then went back someplace else. With the Waldorf piece being the biggest part of those, and that had a direct result on their program and what happened with them last year. The other thing was private schools, hearing about private schools. So wanted to kind of look at what is their enrollment trends and what we can know. So thank you, Christy. She actually contacted them to get current year numbers. Previous years came from OSBI, so there's not as much detail to it. But if you look at the Island Christian Academy, which is a pre-K 12 program, they currently have 17 kids in pre-K and 125 K-12. And those are head counts where we deal in FTE. So if we count, a kid there one period at the high school, they're a 0.25. These are head counts. So they could be there one class, or they could be there full time. I don't know when it comes to, but it's number of kids. But if we look at theirs, out of that 142 they currently had, last year they had 109, the year before they had 133. And it's a pattern that I've seen over the years where they go up and down based on their program. But the reality is, if we compare to 1920, which is kind of the pre-COVID year, they're up about 9 kids from where they were at that time. The Wellington Day School is a pre-K to 8. They have 28 kids in pre-K and K, and then 32 in grades 1 to 8. Again, they don't report to OSBI, so we don't have any previous history on them. The Waldorf School, this year's a pre-K 6th grade. They have basically 77 kids in pre-K and kindergarten, 54 and 16 for a total of 131. They had 119 in 1920, so they're up slightly, but not dramatically. But the numbers that are actually down some are homeschool. 2 years ago, we were at 126. Last year went to 207 when COVID kicked in. We're back down to 118 kids that are homeschooling. And then the transfers out, you can see in previous years, we've had 98, 95. This year, we're at 77. And then transfers in, where we've had 19 and 26, we're 27. So those numbers are very similar to, if I want to use pre-COVID, 1920 as kind of our base number in there. So it kind of gives you an idea of what the, what it looks like around us in some of our private schools that are in the community that we have here. And that I think covers the enrollment.
Yeah, and you also had anecdotal information from other districts and their enrollment trends, which is interesting as well.
I'll talk about that a little bit too. I was at a finance officers meeting with the ESD, and there's, I don't know, 55 people from different districts from, Bellingham to Edmonds, that region. And there were some that were dramatically down, and our neighbor across the water is down 920 kids, which was quite a shock. We have other districts that are down, 50 to 100 kids. And I think there was maybe out of the 45, there may have been 3 districts that were actually up. And when they're up, they're talking about 30 to 50 kids. But even those that were up are actually down from 2 years ago because they took huge losses last year. So we're in a very similar situation. And what we're finding is that in most districts, kindergarten is not materializing this year. And everybody anticipated the low kindergarten numbers would increase in first grade this year as more of those students who didn't attend last year would come back. And that's not happening. And it's something that we're seeing. If you look at our kindergarten first grade numbers, you're going to see small numbers. It's predominantly what's happening around the region. So I think it's a very, I wouldn't call it normal, but I think it's something that we're seeing throughout the Puget Sound area, at least the northern part of Puget Sound, which is what we're part of. So, basically when we look at enrollment, we're seeing the decreasing enrollment most places. I think there was, one in the Bellingham area. There was a couple in Snohomish County that were slightly up, but most of them were not. So that's kind of the general picture of where enrollment is in, Island, Whatcom, Skagit, and Snohomish County.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
I'm really wanted to give the board facts on enrollment because we've heard a lot about it. So appreciate all the work Christy did to gather the data directly from those schools. And for Dan for putting the report together.
Sure.
Thanks, Dan. I especially appreciated just how you drilled down into the comings and goings of the fifth grade students in your example, because it just really personalizes the numbers and helps us understand the stories behind the students who enter and exit the district. Thanks.
I think it's important for us to know that, though. These are our students, our clients, if you want to call them that. And I think we need to understand, the movement of kids and why they're coming and why they're going. And, rather than listening to they're all doing this or they're all doing that without actually looking at facts, I think it's important for us to have that information.
I want to thank, Anne, you're talking about muted.
Thank you, Brooke. I think it's important. I think parents and families feel heard too when their data is personalized, because it really does show us, where kids are going and where they're coming from. And that's just good for all of us to know. So thank you for that.
And we do. We track every student that comes and goes. I think it's important as a district we do that. So it's good feedback for us.
And I also want to acknowledge the parents who provide exit interviews or who provide exit letters, and just what useful information that is. And, it's every student in the district is part of this South Whittier School District family. So when somebody moves out of our schools, it's really great to hear why, and always with hopes that those students will be very successful in their next placement.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the effort that both Mr. Poolman and Ms. Vaccaro put in to get that information for us. I found it, as Anne and Marnie said, incredibly interesting. I don't know if it is worth getting an annual report on that, worth the effort getting an annual report on that, but it was interesting to me.
I would be happy to do that, and I've done that in the past.
Mhm.
It's not real difficult.
Okay.
I can access it through the system, and I give our building secretaries a big thank you because they enter the data in there. So all I'm really doing is pulling data that they enter and looking at it.
Yeah, then if we already have that, I would love to get that. I don't know when would be good. If this would be the best time for you, or whatever the best time is for that you think the information is most accurate. Or
I
most
would
complete.
suggest maybe an early spring report, because the first few months, there's a lot of movement. And that way we'd have enough data to really look at something, because if you look at it now, it's going to be a very limited amount of information.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, I would love to hear that each year. Because as Marnie and Ann were saying, it personalizes it. It puts a face and lets us know what is more attractive to those families than our district, our community, whether it's someone going to homeschool or leaving the island entirely. I think that's really valuable for us to know.
This
And-
year,
and Brooke-
I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to add, I think it also shows us how we can sometimes provide value for families when they do need another choice. For instance, families who chose public school when Waldorf needed to take a year off. So it's great to be able to provide an opportunity for families in those moments of need.
I was just going to say that this year in particular, we will get some very relevant data when it finally gets released, and that is the island census data. So that we can look at, again, the ages of folks on the island, the number of children on the island, hopefully It was supposed to be out this month, September. We haven't seen it yet. They've only done the redistricting. But Dan's got his eye on that too. So once we get that information, we can, I say we, Dan will prepare a report for you.
And the nice part is that it is broken down by school district. So we can give you numbers that are specific to us and not island-wide, because sometimes that doesn't help much. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that in the comparison to the 2010 census. What has changed, or has it changed?
A fellow numbers nerd. Anything else on this financial or enrollment from any of the members of the board? Andrea, Damien, Saul? Okay, then we'll move on to superintendent's report. Dr. Moshe.
Thank you. So this is our 4th week of school. And the good news is I'm really proud of our students and our staff because we are keeping COVID out of our schools. I also want to take the opportunity, everybody's working really hard, but right now our nursing staff is on overload because they are the front line of dealing with students who may present a symptom or happen to be out sick. We are testing to return. We are also testing students for COVID. This is the testing. We have a rapid test and we do a PCR, which is the one that comes back after a few days. So we have a flow chart that we follow, and it's different for when one is vaccinated or unvaccinated. So we'll go with a student, especially at the elementary level, that cannot be vaccinated. So if we have a student who is out sick, we give a call. We offer them the opportunity to come right to school to be tested. It's done safely. The nurses are gloved and wearing masks and assist the student and family with getting the testing. We do that so that we know if someone is infectious. We send off the PCR, which takes a few days, but we have the rapid result immediately, and then we can combine the two. We've only had one situation where the rapid test was positive and we sent off the PCR and it was negative. Most of the time they coincide. We have a chart on our homepage that specifically deals with COVID in school. And you can see it if you, Christy, if you can just do me the favor and bring up that homepage. I don't need to share my screen. If you take a second and bring that up, folks can look at that. They can also see the toolkit we're using from Island County Public Health, which is inclusive of that flow chart that our nurses follow. Every single one of them is helping families. So if somebody's a close contact, if there's a family that has illness at home and they're worried, they don't want to send their child, our message to everyone is assume that we're all infected, right? So wear your mask, stay distant. If you have symptoms, stay out of school, but we will do drive-by, right? We do it out in the parking lot. You can come in and if you are a student or a staff or the family of a student, we will provide that testing for you. So this is the list of current cases. So it's, again, based on what I'm seeing from our colleagues in other districts, we are doing amazingly well in our community and in our school. We have protocol through the county as to what would require us to, if we had to close a class for 2 weeks and so on. We are in continuous, I say we, but the nurses are in continuous conversation with the county, with people if there is a close contact. There are very few actually in school because we are masked, because we are staying distanced. So I'm really, again, it is no surprise that we have a few cases, but I'm really happy with how much we've kept it out of our schools. So the protocol and the testing program that we use is through Learn to Return. It is provided for us. It is at no cost to our district. It's now, it's busy, but it's a routine by 2:30 every day. If the PCR tests get dropped off at UPS, shipped, and the results come in directly to the nurses. And they have a list of every single test that's done and the results. So we are really working to keep everyone in school. The other update I had, and certainly if you have any questions about that, the other update I had is that we plan to do a State of the District for the board on October 13th. That is a workshop. You will hear from the superintendent about the state of the district and where we are on the goals that the board has set. And you will hear about every single school building through our school improvement plan process that the principals will present. This is workshop format, right? So this is discussion, conversation. The principals are currently working with staff on how the district goals that the board has set translate to the building level, and how we're going to assess our students and how we're going to measure progress. So you'll see and hear all about that on October 13th. And that's really all I had for updates. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know we're all still very nervous about COVID. The good news is that COVID in our county has actually declined. It's starting to trend down again after Labor Day. The nurses through Emmy Atwood talk with the county every other week, and I talk with the county once a month now on a regular Zoom call. That doesn't mean that they're not in touch on a daily basis over whatever arises, but I feel like we're navigating the whitewater as best we can.
Thank you. I appreciate the update on how we're doing against COVID, and I love seeing the school improvement plans. That was something I missed last year, since our school improvement plan was get us back into the classrooms, at least part-time. So it's great seeing those presentations and hearing how our goals for you translate into action at the school level. So I'm very much looking forward to that. It sounds like we're going to have a very busy workshop next in October.
It's good we have 3 weeks until then.
Anything from any of the other board members for Dr. Moshe?
I just also want to thank you for drawing our attention to the dashboard on the website. I think that's a useful place for the public to monitor, and I'm grateful that that is transparent and accessible. Thank you.
Okay, then thank you, Dr. Moshe. We'll move on to board comment, and we'll start with Saul, since you've got something prepared.
Yeah, sure. So I have my presentation about what's going on at the school level from the student perspective. And we're beginning a new school year, so there's definitely a lot of school spirit. We had a really good freshman orientation and new student orientation right before school started, and that had really, really good turnout. So a lot of freshmen showed up for that. I think Lauren touched on that, or some of the middle schoolers or somebody touched on that earlier, but that was definitely a big success. Beginning with, in-person learning again, a lot of people were worried about it. A lot of students had concerns, but so far it's been really successful. And this is really important, there has not been any mask problems. I've talked to the different teachers and the principals, and there really has not been any problems with students not wanting to wear masks or taking off their masks or anything like that. We've really done a good job of following the COVID guidelines when it comes to masks. We could really do better when it comes to just sanitizing our hands more. That's been something that we're trying to focus on. But apart from that, the COVID situation is really good starting the year off, and there's a lot of really good things happening. The new freshman class So, and the board, please feel free to interrupt me at any point if you have like questions about anything. So the new freshman class is a really, really good class. I personally really like them. They seem very eager to learn after a very long period of all of us kind of being stuck at home. So I really like the freshman class, and I think we all like the freshmen. But and I talked to them about how they like the classes. They really like the classes. They are definitely adjusting to high school really well. And we actually kind of have two freshman classes because the sophomores also didn't really get to start off their year properly last year. So we've got a lot of students who are new at the high school, and they've been adjusting really well. Then we've got homecoming coming up, and we're trying to keep homecoming as normal as possible with COVID in mind, right? It's a tradition. It goes back a really long ways, and we want to keep those traditions alive, while at the same time not putting anybody at risk. So I'm part of that, the planning. There's not a homecoming dance or anything, because obviously that would be a COVID problem, but we do have a homecoming event outside. It's going to be a little bit different with masks and everything, but we're going to try to keep COVID in mind with everything we do. There's going to be the traditional homecoming court. There's going to be hallway decorations, all of the different bells and whistles that come with the homecoming tradition. We're trying to keep that alive. And that ties into my next bullet right here, which is school spirit. I think I've been at this school for a long time, and I've been part of the district for a long time. I would say that because I've been going here for so long, school spirit is at its peak right now. Like from a student perspective, it's hitting its peak right now. A lot of students are showing up to sports events, and a lot of students are really excited about the clubs and ASB and leadership and the different programs that are going on and sports and everything. So there's a lot of school spirit, and that's really positive, I think, moving forward into a new year and a new sort of post-COVID era, hopefully. And the new clubs, this ties right into school spirit. We had an amazing club fair, probably the best club fair, according to Mr. Patton, at least, the best club fair he's had in his experience being the principal of the high school, where all of these different clubs, and a lot of them are new clubs, are being started and getting absolutely unheard of amounts of new students signing up for them. Like Model UN, for example, the Model United Nations Club, which has been performing really well in conferences, has probably between 20 and 30 students now. I was in the meeting earlier today, so I can say that we definitely have a really good Model UN club. There's a few clubs that the board just signed off on. So the Ultimate Frisbee Club, I believe, the Queer and Trans Club, and the Art Club. And all of those I have been a part of in some way, and I can tell you they're doing a really good job. And there's a lot of students really excited about them. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is the amount of freshmen that are signing up for the new clubs, because typically, historically, it's been older students, the sophomores, juniors, and seniors, but now we have a really good freshman class that is also participating in that. Now, the ethnic studies class is kind of a touchy subject, and I think that that's something that I want to keep in mind while discussing this, because there's a lot of opinions on it. But I tried my best I interviewed as many freshmen who were taking the ethnic studies class as possible. It's this new class, and all of them, every single freshman I talked to, gave incredibly positive feedback. Some of them said that they just really liked learning about the history of the United States and the world through a little bit of a different perspective, a non-traditional lens. They said they learned more in this class than any other class, especially previous history classes, which I thought was very interesting and informative. They talked about cultures. They learned about different cultures and white supremacy, Native history, And they all thought that it was really interesting what they were learning about and the perspectives that they were learning about it from. They said that the class had a relaxing atmosphere, and one of the best things about it was the teacher and the way the teacher can involve students directly in the teaching process and how the class is run. So they really, really liked the teacher, and the teacher's a really good fit for that class. There was a lot of criticism coming from other teachers, which I found interesting about the ethnic studies class and older students. It can be pretty divisive, but overall, I talked to as many freshmen as I could, and I couldn't get any who complained about the class. So it's implemented, and all I can say is that it's being implemented well, coming from the freshmen who I'm representing here. And I think that ties really well into student voice. That's something that a lot of students were concerned about before COVID, and that's something that the school really tried to focus on in the new after COVID going forward, is how can we broaden student voice and sort of put an emphasis on that. And so our leadership class, for example, that's a class that's really involved in different student voice discussions. And they're doing a lot to try to help our communities here and have students directly impact what's going on in the community. So as a lot of us probably know, the 525 and Double Bluff intersection can be kind of hairy sometimes. It's a scary intersection. So they're trying to work on ways to improve safety at that intersection, which if you drive a car on South Whidbey, that's something you probably care about. They want to bring more culture to South Whidbey. And by the way, these are not things that the teacher wants. These are coming from the students. The students want to focus on bringing more culture to South Whidbey, given the diversity of the community or lack of. And they want to try to figure out how we can sort of broaden the perspective of the student body. And they have this Boost Everyone project. I don't know if Mr. Silva's here, but he's focusing on that. And we're really starting off the year, the leadership class is starting off the year with definitely a focus on community service. And I think that's really important to remember in a small community where we can have difficult discussions, but we got to put our community first sometimes. And student voice, I mean, I should touch on the BLM banner. There was some comments about the BLM banner. I was actually part of the decision to keep, so the ASB actually voted on what banners to put in front of the school. That's an ASB decision now. And ASB did vote to keep the BLM banner up and to replace it, and also put up monthly banners with monthly themes. So that was an ASB decision, and that was something that it was made to reflect the views of the student body rather than the board. The climate walkout. Now, on Friday, I'm not exactly sure how many of us know this. On Friday, the students, USL is planning a climate walkout to highlight our climate, and they want to, they have a few goals. They want to have Island County declare a climate emergency. They want to create, make sure people know how they can impact the climate and how they can help. So we have a recycling program, for example, that's being implemented at the high school. And I think the climate walkout is going to be something that is a great opportunity for students to reflect what they think that students should be doing and our community should be doing to tackle the climate emergency. So that's going to be Friday. They're going to walk out of, and I'm going to participate in this, probably shouldn't say that, but I am, walk out of the 4th period class and go up to the Castle Park and then protest on Max Walton Road. COVID concerns. I think Dr. Mocha, I think you did a really good job addressing the COVID concerns. I can tell you that the COVID concerns were a lot more significant early on. Now we're a couple weeks in. Early on, students were really worried. They're like, we're all in classes together. What are we going to do? Are we all going to catch COVID? And I mean, people were really worried about that. But now we've seen that there have been very, very few cases. One of my friends got sick, but there was no sort of spreading. And as long as there was no big spreading events, people really are not really concerned about COVID as much as far as the students are concerned. But we're taking a lot of precautions, as I think Dr. Mocha talked about. And we definitely, the students feel that the situation is under control. Apart from that, my last two bullets are just major student discussions. Climate change, I think I mentioned that. Climate change, the BLM banner, that's something that the BLM banner, that issue isn't over. We're going to continue to talk about, the students are going to continue to talk about what kind of banners we should have and where we should put that. It's not a settled issue, but that's something that should come from students. That decision should be made from the students. And I think I haven't talked to a single student who disagrees with me on that. I certainly wouldn't want the decision to be made by the board or the superintendent. And that's something that we continue to discuss at the high school. Apart from that, there's not that much that us students disagree on. I think that we're moving into a new year on the right foot. We're definitely moving forward with school spirit. And I think we're doing a really good job of making sure we follow the COVID protocols and everything. I'm excited. I think the student body's excited. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Does anybody on the board have questions about anything or something they want to talk about?
So I don't have a question for you because your report was so very thorough, and I just want to really warmly welcome you and say what a pleasure it is to have you with us. Thanks. It's great to hear your report, and it's great to have you on this board.
Yeah, thank you, Sol, for that beautiful report. I had a little bit of a question, or just kind of food for thought. I know you're very involved in leadership at the school there and have been for quite some time, and you also are part of different activities. And it sounds like you really have in your school career, been part of various groups of students and leadership. I'm really excited that more kids are involved in or wanting to be involved in homecoming and school spirit and things like that, because that's traditionally been a place, as well as leadership, that hasn't always been inclusive. And so I'm wondering how you feel, and this may be a discussion over time, but how you feel some of the really good work that students are doing in communicating their needs and communicating what they want and how they want to drive their own education. Do you think that's changing the way people feel when it comes to some of those traditional things like homecoming, like leadership? Are more kids wanting to be involved, and do more kids feel belonging and inclusion? I don't know if you know the answer to that question.
No, I actually do.
Important.
I actually do. When I walk into the leadership class, it's a very busy class. I can tell you that. It's definitely, we have, all the classes that are involved in leadership, any of the classes like yearbook, for example, I think students, they just want to be involved in what's going on. And I think it gets more and more inclusive. I think that's the direction we're moving in. Whether you like it or not, that's personal opinion, but that's the direction we're moving in. And that's something that I'm seeing. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
I'm really excited to hear about all the interest in the clubs. That's been a pet love of my own, is finding communities for students within the schools. And I think that sports teams and clubs are just fantastic ways to do that. So hearing that the club fair was so successful makes me very, very happy. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for putting together such a detailed report. And I can tell that you went out of your way to broaden your network to students that you don't normally talk to. And I think that's fantastic. And that's exactly what we want in a student representative, is someone who's going to put in that time and effort, because I want to recognize that it is time and effort to bring the voice from a diverse group of students within the schools to us. And so I think that's really fantastic. I want to give you big compliments for that. It does me good to hear that school spirit's doing so well, because I know that that's been something that our CEE surveys showed as an area where we had an opportunity for growth to see. So to
That's
see
a nice
that-
way of putting it. Opportunity for growth.
Well, that actually goes back to specific language that the CEE representative used, where when you have something with a lot of neutral responses, it's not a problem yet, but it could either become a problem or a strength. So to hear that it sounds like it's becoming a strength is great.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask our sports team, they would say that it's a strength. I mean, I would say that I would much rather be on a sports team and have a lot of very spirited students in the bleachers supporting us. And that's what we have this year. Masked, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I really want I want the community members to have a chance to give questions about what's going on at the school level, because that's not something that they can necessarily have all the time. So what would be the right format for them to ask questions about questions to me about what's going on at the school level?
That's a really interesting thought. That I love the idea behind it. It might be-
Joe or Christy, could we do like a spot on the webpage where it could be like ask a student rep, where people could submit questions?
We've been in dialogue with Saul over email about how we can create a school representative email. The thing that we want to make sure we do is have it come through chain of command, like we do anything else. So student reps go to our student, and community members would come to our administrators or board. Certainly the board could ask Saul to then gather input for those kinds of questions. We don't typically have a direct line from community to student.
That would make sense.
Considering
You want to have an opportunity to take a minute though and compliment Saul for, again, the board has put out a vision for what our graduates will represent, and Saul is living the vision that of being he's certainly multiculturally engaged, literate, and an active member of his community. And I believe, Saul, you're already ready for the challenges of a global society. He was very modest in talking about Model UN because he is a star on Model UN. So it's
well, there's so many new members in Model UN. I think I'm going to get pushed over pretty quickly. A lot of them are really talented. So
well, that's good to hear. But Saul,
I want to get pushed over.
I think Saul, in 2 years, when there's another board election, he might be one of our candidates.
I don't know if I'm going to be here in 2 years.
Well, that's true. You may be off to college, but at some point in your future, you'll find public office. But I just am really proud of the work you've done, and certainly taking the sort of requirements of the job and the learning the ropes, so to speak, making sure that there's no surprises, making sure that you're talking to Mr. Patton and Mr. Silva before, just to make sure we're all dotting I's and crossing T's. I think Saul's doing a great job. Just amazing student rep. You're at the head of a long line that the board has had experience with. So it's always good to, see someone who's really engaged.
So I am actually I believe the first student rep that was chosen by an ASB rather than the board itself. And I think that I'm gonna just compliment the board here. That's a really good step in the right direction when it comes to student voice. I can't wait to meet the other student school board member, the one that's going to be appointed by the board. But having a school board member who is chosen by the ASB or by the students represented by the ASB is definitely a step in the right direction when it comes to student voice.
Yeah, and we've discussed previously on the board that we want the method with which we choose student reps to be something that we look at frequently, to see how we can best serve both the students themselves, the district, or not both, but the students themselves, the district, and the board as a whole. So I think I'm glad that we're making steps in the right direction. I wanted to go back to the idea of emailing questions in, and maybe we can finesse a way that we can do that where it does come through the superintendent and or board first, just to weed out some. I wouldn't want to.
I can take it.
Wouldn't want students to see some emails that we receive.
You don't have to worry about that. I can take it.
No, but that's not the question. Part of our job as school board is to protect the mental health of students. And you are one of our students as well as a member of this board.
Well, and
So-
Brooke, I also want to just
Private information too.
Sorry, Joe. I also just want to hear what Joe said about, Sol, you are the student's representative, right? And the chain of command piece. And so, I'm sure that we can find a solution around where both needs can get met. But I did appreciate Dr. Moshe, you bringing up that aspect of it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Sol, I want to thank you for your reflections on the process, of this shift towards having a student board rep appointed by the ASB. And we did give some consideration to how to make the process of student representation more equitable so that we could have two ways of bringing a student board member to the board. And we also are thinking about how to support students in that application process for that second seat so that every student is equally supported to apply regardless of their comfort level with the particular style of interview or application. So I do appreciate your feedback and welcome further feedback as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing up that very important point, Marnie. I want to note that before our next workshop at 5:30 instead of 6:30, at least some members of the board will be present in order to talk to those who want to apply for the second position on the second student rep position on the board, so that we can help walk people through the application if they need it, or if they have questions, we can answer it, or anything along those lines. So thank you for the reminder that so we can get that information out there. Thank you again, Saul, for the report. Now I want to pass it along to any other board members who have anything they want to talk about, discuss, comment on. I'm seeing shaking heads and okay, then I believe that is the end of board comments and report. So I will now declare this board meeting adjourned. Thank you very much and good night.